Excerpt from Dharma Bums by Kerouac, Chapter 11. At noon we started out, leaving our big packs at the camp where nobody was likely to be till next year anyway, and went up the Scree Valley with just some food and first aid kits. The valley was longer than it looked. In no time at all it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the sun was getting later, more golden look, and the wind was rising, and I began to think, by gosh, how are we ever going to climb that mountain tonight? I put it to Japhy, who said, "You're right, we'll have to hurry. Why don't we just forget it and go on home?" "Oh, come on, Tiger. We'll make a run up that hill, and then we'll go home." The valley was long and long and long, and at the top end it got very steep, and I began to be a little afraid of falling down. The rocks were small, and it got slippery. My ankles were in pain from yesterday's muscle strain anyway. But Morley kept walking and talking, and I noticed his tremendous endurance. Japhy took off his pants so he could just look like an Indian, stark naked, except for a jockstrap, and hiked almost a quarter mile ahead of us, sometimes waiting a while to give us time to catch up, then went on, moving fast, wanting to climb the mountain today. Morley came second, about 50 yards ahead of me all the way. I was in no hurry. Then, as it got late afternoon, I went faster and decided to pass Morley and join Japhy. Now we were at about 11,000 feet, and it was cold, and there was a lot of snow, and to the east we could see immense snow-capped ranges, and wooey levels of valley land below them. We were already practically on top of California. At one point I had to scramble like the others on a narrow ledge around a butte of a rock, and it really scared me. The fall was 100 feet, enough to break your neck, with another little ledge letting you bounce a minute, preparatory to a nice goodbye 1,000-foot drop. The wind was whipping now, yet that whole afternoon, even more than the other, was filled with old premonitions or memories, as though I'd been there before, scrambling on these rocks for another purpose, more ancient, more serious, more simple. We finally got to the foot of the Matterhorn, where there was the most beautiful small lake, unknown to the eyes of most men in this world, seen only by a handful of mountain climbers. A small lake at 11,000 some odd feet, with snow on the edges of it, and beautiful flowers, and a beautiful meadow, an alpine meadow, flat and dreamy, upon which I immediately threw myself and took my shoes off. Japhy had been there a half an hour when I made it, and it was cold now, and his clothes were on again. Morley came up behind it, smiling, and we sat there looking at the imminent steep scree slope of the final crag of Matterhorn. "That don't look too much, we can do it," I said, glad now. "No, Ray, that's more than it looks. Do you realize that's 1,000 feet more? That much? Unless we make a run up there double time, we'll never make it down again to our camp before nightfall, and never make it down to the car at the lodge before tomorrow morning at all. Well, midnight." "Phew, I'm tired," said Morley. "I don't think I'll try it." "Well, that's right," I said. "The whole purpose of mountain climbing, to me, isn't just to show off you can get to the top. It's getting out into this wild country." "Well, I'm going to go," said Japhy. "Well, if you're going to go, I'm going with you." "Morley?" "I don't think I can make it. I'll wait here." And that wind was strong, too strong. I felt that as soon as we'd be a few hundred feet up the slope, it might hamper our climbing. Japhy took a small pack of peanuts and raisins and said, "This'll be our gasoline, boy. You ready, Ray, to make a double-time run?" "Ready? What would I say to the boys in the place if I came all this way only to give up at the last minute?" "It's late, so let's hurry," Japhy started, up walking very rapidly, and then even running sometimes, where the climb had to be to the right or the left along ridges of scree. Scree is long landslides of rock and sand, very difficult to scramble through. Always a little avalanches going on. At every few steps we took it seemed we were going higher and higher on a terrifying elevator. I gulped when I turned around to look back and see all the state of California, it would seem, stretching out in all three directions under huge blue skies, with frightening planetary space clouds and immense vistas of distant valleys, and even plateaus, and for all I knew, whole Nevadas out there. It was terrifying to look down and see Morley, a dreaming spot, by the little lake waiting for us. Oh, why didn't I stay with old Henry, I thought. I now began to be afraid to go any higher from sheer fear of being too high. I began to be afraid of being blown away by the wind. All the nightmares I'd ever had about falling off mountains and precipitous buildings ran through my head in perfect clarity. Also, with every 20 steps we took upwards, we both became completely exhausted. "That's because of the high altitude now, Ray," said Japhy, sitting beside me, panting. "We have raisins and peanuts, and you'll see that kick it gives you." And each time it gave us a tremendous kick, we both jumped up and without a word climbed and climbed another 20-30 steps, then sat down, panting, swaying in the cold wind, high on top of the world, our noses sniffled like the noses of little boys playing late Saturday afternoon their final little games in the winter. Now the wind began to howl like the wind in the movies about the Shroud of Tibet. The steepness began to be too much for me. I was afraid now to look back any more. I peeked. I couldn't even make out Morley by the tiny lake. "Hurry it up," yelled Japhy from 100 feet ahead. "It's getting awfully late." I looked up to the peak. It was right there. I'd be there in 5 minutes. "Only half an hour to go," yelled Japhy. I didn't believe it. In 5 minutes of scrabbling angrily upward, I fell down and looked up, and it was still just as far away. What I didn't like about the peak top was the clouds of all the world were blowing right through it like fog. "Wouldn't see anything up there anyway," I muttered. But why did I ever let myself into this? Japhy was way ahead of me now. He'd left the peanuts and raisins with me. It was a kind of lonely solemnity, now which I had decided to rush to the top, if it killed him. He didn't sit down any more. Soon he was a whole football field, 100 yards ahead of me, getting smaller. Looking back, and like Lot's wife, that did it. "This is too high," I yelled to Japhy in a panic. He didn't hear me. I raced a few more feet up and fell exhausted on my belly, slipping back just a little. "This is too high," I yelled. I was really scared. Supposing I'd start to slip back for good. These screes might start sliding any time anyway. "That damn mountain goat, Japhy." I could see him jumping through the foggy air up ahead from rock to rock. Up, just like the flash of his boot bombs. Now I can keep up with... How can I keep up with a maniac like that? But with nutty desperation I followed him. Finally I came to a kind of ledge where I could sit at a level angle, instead of having to cling, not to slip, and I nudged my whole body inside the ledge, just to hold me there tight, so the wind would not dislodge me. I looked down and around, and I had it. "I'm staying here," I yelled to Japhy. "Come on, Smith, only another 5 minutes. I only got 100 feet to go. I'm staying right here, it's too high." He said nothing and went on. I saw him collapse and pant, get up and make his run again. I nudged myself closer to the edge and closed my eyes and thought, "Oh, what a life this is. Why do we have to be born in the first place? Only so we can have our little poor gentle flesh laid out to such impossible horrors as huge mountains and rock and empty space." And with horror I remembered the famous Zen saying, "When you get to the top of the mountain, keep climbing." The saying made my hair stand on end. It had been such cute poetry sitting on Alva's straw mats. Now it was enough to make my heart pound and my heart bleed for being born at all. In fact, when Japhy gets to the top of the crag, he will keep climbing, the way the wind's blowing. Well, this old philosopher is staying right here. I closed my eyes. Besides, I thought, rest and be kind. You don't have to prove anything. Suddenly I heard a beautiful broken yodel of a strange musical and mystical intensity in the wind, and looked up, and it was Japhy standing on top of Matterhorn Peak, laying out his triumphant mountain-conquering Buddha mountain-smashing sound of joy. It was beautiful. It was funny, too, up here on the not-so-funny top of California, and in all that rushing fog. But I had to hand it to him, the guts, the endurance, the sweat, and now the crazy human singing, whipped cream on top of the ice cream. I didn't have enough strength to answer his yodel. He ran around up there and went outside to investigate the little flat top of some kind, he said, that ran a few feet west and then dropped sheer back down, maybe as far as I care, to the sawdust floors of Virginia City. It was insane. I could hear him yelling at me. I just nudged farther into my protective nook, trembling. I looked down at the small lake where Morley was lying on his back, with a blade of grass in his mouth, and said out loud, "Now there's the karma of these 3 men here. Japhy Rider gets to his triumphant mountain top and makes it. I almost make it and have to give up and huddle in a bloody cave. But the smartest of them all is that poet's poet lying down there, with his knees crossed to the sky, chewing on a flower, dreaming by a gurgly plage. Damn it, they'll never get me up here again."